the Sarwan Kumar of the family. Devotees, let's welcome MP Rushton Paray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neil Ramdat, and I don't pay him to say that, by the way. He says it out of love, and I'm sure it comes from a very good place. Pandit Abhidanand, thank you very much for being here and gracing us with your words of wisdom today. We always appreciate when you find the time, I know, in your busy local and international schedule to come to Mayaro. Thank you very much. Pandit Mohan, our founding Pandit, Pandit Mohan married me 30 odd years ago, and he's still standing strong. Sister Pandit, thank you very much for coming. Please give Pandit a round of applause. Our young and dynamic Pandit Rishi, who has taken the mantle for us in the family in offering our spiritual guidance as we go along. Thank you very much for spending today with Mommy as we celebrate her birthday as well. To my colleagues, my parliamentary colleagues who are here, MP for Shagwanas West, Dinesh Rambali, MP Rai Ragbir, my good friend Kyle Taklal Singh, our local government practitioners who are here, Vice Chairman Hazari Ramdeen, Councillor David Law, Alderman Tulsi and his lovely wife. Most importantly, all of you who have accepted our invitation to come and celebrate this dual occasion with my family and I, as we look forward to 2023 and beyond as to where we go with our temple here and how we treat, or as the Kata said today, how we deal with our parents, our grandparents, our elderly, and so on. And we lost a very valuable aunt last year, and it was sudden because no one expected it. And it is so important that we celebrate people while they are alive. It's all well and nice to say nice and good things when people die at their funerals and so on, but it is very, very important that we take the opportunity to celebrate them while they're alive. And with today's function, there was an opportunity to do both. Mommy is turning 73 later this week, I think, right? On the 27th. And her twin, now I can tell you, thank God, they're not identical. I don't think we had enough space for both of them. So they're in their own space, and I think they work well with one another. And it just so happened that on the 27th as well, from the records, it would make 25 years that the organization, which is called the Sumatie Sabha Devi Mandir, has been an entity. Temple took a while to build, but the entity, the organization, turns 25. And I thought, what best way, what will be a fitting way to do both? Celebrate the birthdays of both ladies, and also acknowledge the work that many, not only my mother, but many would have done to get us here in this temple today. And I thought that it would have been a nice gesture to try and do both today. So I have a very short brief prepared for those of you who would not have been with all of us many, many years ago, as to a little run-up on how we got here and where that journey started. And there's a saying that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single footstep. So in the next 5 to 10 minutes, I just want to describe that single footstep and perhaps highlight a few milestone moments along the way that would have gotten us here today. So I'd like to start a bit with a bit of our childhood growing up in Guayaguayari, Vashti, Rhonda, and I, we lived in a combination home. We had the business place and the home, squeezed into one in Guayaguayari. And with my grandmother, mommy and daddy, we all lived in the same house. My father and his parents, although they were Hindu in culture, they commingled into the Presbyterian faith. So my paternal grandmother practiced Hinduism, while my paternal grandfather, he practiced Christianity. Now, in order to keep my siblings and I religiously grounded, my mother decided that she's going to buy these long knee dresses, shirt jacks, and she got us positioned to go to church because there were no Hindu temples anywhere close around. Now, mommy comes from a very strong Hindu family in Princestown. So coming to Guayaguayari as a young bride, a young mother, a choice had to be made. How do you get your children grounded in the spirituality that you would have grown up into? So, with long knee dresses and shirt jacks, we armed ourselves with copies of the Holy Bible, and we marched from our home in Guayaguayari to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which was about 5 to 10 minutes walk from where we live. And then on a Sunday, to reinforce that, she would send us to school, Sunday school by the Bengoche residence, and that in her mind would have further reinforced our spiritual bindings. Now, while mommy was happy with our non-objection to go to church, she, as I said, coming from a strong Hindu family, she was at a lot of pain for us not to be exposed to Hinduism and Hindu culture in a much larger way, much larger form. Now, while Vashti and Rana and I were not, now you probably not hear me mention my last sister Vasha, but she was further down the block, so she out of this part of the story for now. But while we were not totally disconnected from the Hindu calling, we learned what mommy practiced, which was 4 prayers. And that was the same prayers we say over and over and over, because that's what mommy taught us. And we were armed sufficiently to find a way around the temple a bit. So we weren't where we were supposed to be, but we had it adequately enough to get us around. At some point in time, my grandmother handed over the business to my mother. And it was in those formative years that my mother decided in her mind that a place of worship for Hindu families residing in the Mayaro community was something that she wanted to do. And as I said, the closest temple for us was in Rio Claro. Now, I heard Dr. Rai refer to her as Ma Paray, so I just want to confirm that that is what she's fondly known as. Now, Nell doesn't get the Ma Paray as yet. I suspect it will come eventually. But Ma Paray, my mother, she was never short on ambition. And up to today at 73, my mother's mantra, and for those of you who would have been at the end sometimes of some heated discussion, Sintra Paray gets what Sintra Paray wants. Correct? Nice. Now, she decided what she wanted, and nothing was going to stop her in getting that done. And Shirley Budu Singh, my aunt, who I had referred to as Auntie Bam for the rest of this conversation, I would recall several conversations between Auntie Bam and Mommy about this temple, and what it should do, and where it should go, and how it should operate. And I mean, most of the time it was supposed to be talk, but it turned into arguments, because both are strong-willed women, both are businesswomen, and everybody wanted their own way. So I know I could recall as a child several conversations about getting this temple going. And it was that dialogue in those formative years that have all of us sitting here today. And with that spirit of determination, Ma Paray set the wheels in motion to make her dreams a reality. Now, as a businesswoman, she has always displayed drive and determination. And there was one label that she got in Guayaguayare, where we live. There was this gentleman who most of the times was very inebriated. And when she scolded him, he would call her the gay and ferocious dandelion. Because in his mind, that you couldn't talk her out of anything, she smiled and she got her way. And she put him out most of the time from the shop when he started to misbehave. So over the years, that persona stuck with her. Now, thankfully, in doing a bit of research for today, I got some records from our extraordinary teacher in the community here, Miss Rajwanti Harikissoon. I was absolutely surprised to see the record keeping, the notebook, the notes that were taken. It's 25 years or more. And if I had the time to tell the story in depth of all the meetings and the conversations that would have gone on, it's really an interesting read. And Rajwanti, I want to thank you for holding on to those records and presenting it to me today. And I will hand back those records to you, because I'm sure as we talk about the next generation of Hindus and young Hindu children in this community, I think that record will be important for them to keep. And for most of you who walked in today, in front on the entrance, I put two very important pieces of documents in front there. It was the letter that was written officially by her husband, Mr. Mukesh Harikissoon, on that day in 1997, I believe, where a request was made to Mr. Moonan, that is Motilal Moonan, to donate the property that we are on here today. And the other picture frame that we have there, it's the record of a newspaper article where he brought, the BOM had published what Mr. Moonan was doing in terms of the development of the Hindu community here in Mayaro. So it's there for you all to take a read on your way out. Now, the first meeting, which was very interesting, occurred, the official meeting to get this conversation of a temple going to happen on October 3rd, 1996. And that meeting, incidentally, was called by my very same aunt who passed away, Mrs. Judy Soklal, the one who I said that, we must no longer wait to celebrate people. We must do it while they are alive. And I felt that all the good things we said about her, really, we should have done it while she was alive. And in reading the notes, she was the one that convened the first meeting to articulate my mother's vision with the group of people who were in attendance. And on that day, there were 40 people in attendance. And she was elected as the president of the Hindu group, as it was called then. And Uncle Nanan Panchu, many of you who know him, he was vice president and a very good community member here in Mayaro, Mr. Krishna Kissoon. He nominated Mr. Panchu. Auntie Bam nominated Krishna, and I think Rajwanti as secretary and assistant secretary and so on. Auntie Bam was supposed to be the chancellor of the exchequer. She was supposed to be the one to manage the money whenever it came, whatever quantities it came in. And I see on a note, trustees were Randa Paray, Mr. Prem Kissoon, Mr. Balrup Mohan, Mr. Ramluchan Siulal, and there were some other members on that day. Many of them are still with us in the community. Mr. Ramsaran Ramlal, Mr. Ricky Budu Singh, Mr. Boise, I think, who has passed, Mr. Gadrad, and Miss Polly Kissoon. And in looking at the records, it was very interesting in terms of the conversations, in terms of, what was happening in that very, very first meeting. And over the next year or two, the idea here was to raise money. And from barbecues and Chinese queue and chutney shows and selling cake and selling street drink for, on the beach, nothing was too small. No idea was too small to raise funds. And in the notes, you saw every single activity that happened to start to raise the money to build the temple. Now, one critical thing that I saw in the notes as well, that there was supposed to establish a youth arm, which I didn't think get off the ground based on the notes. But there was one striking, important note that I saw that Rajwanti would have written down. And it said that all women are to bring along their husbands, kicking and screaming if they had to. Because there's a problem that the ladies were coming and the men were not there. And I think that's a problem that we still have up to today. And that's something I think we need to address somehow. Now, at some point in time, several very prominent families in the community got involved in the discussion. The Harilal family, the Munans, the Ramesas, business families got involved in the conversation, all with strong Hindu background, and they all came together to pool ideas and knowledge and resources to get this temple off the ground. And Mr. Ken Hadwar Singh, I don't know if you say I called him, I asked him he's not too well. But at some point in time, you needed to get people who knew how to build stuff. And I remember having several conversations as a child, a young man, with Ken and my mother. And I know at that point in time, Mr. Mealy, and they were very, very actively involved as well in terms of conceptualizing how we're going to get this temple here. And on November 14th, 1996, there was a proposition from Mommy that, I'm not sure how she knew, but there was some private and state land in Church Road or Pleasance, and there were good spots to construct this temple. And then on the 16th of January 1997, at a meeting again that was held, Mommy told everyone that the location in Church Road was occupied by squatters, and that area was definitely a no-no, and that was off the record. In May of 1997, the group received an acknowledgement letter from the Ministry of Agriculture regarding a request for land to build a Hindu temple. And as far as I'm aware, we're in 2023 and it is still under consideration. Now, on that very same day, as far as the notes go, the group had a visit from Secretary General of the Mahasabha, Mr. Satnarayan Maharaj, and Pandit Brahmanan Rambachan. And in that meeting, they too engaged the members on the conceptualization of the temple, talking about the importance of the temple, and several commitments were made by both Mr. Maharaj and Pandit Rambachan to assist in any way that they can. The pivotal moment for temple came when the letter, which is dated August 27, 1997, the request was made to Mr. Motilal Munan to lend his charitable assistance in granting a parcel of land for the construction of a Mayaro Hindu temple. On September 17, 1997, Mapari, Mrs. Harikisun, Mr. Panchu, and teacher Judy Suklal went to Mr. Munan's home, I believe, and there they met with him and his two sons and the managing director of the company. And after some conversations, with little convincing, I think Mr. Munan was very, very, very supportive. On that fateful day, Mr. Munan agreed to grant 3 acres of land for the purpose of the construction of the temple, with his vision of someday the property may be able to host a school, primary school, up to an art and cultural center as well. And that was in his mind, in his vision, what he wanted the land to be given for. And it got full support from his sons and the managing director, and he identified that at some point in time, he will come to Mayaro and point out exactly where the property was. On September 30th, 1997, Mr. Moonan, he came up here with his 2 sons, and he identified this spot that we're on, the very same land that we stand on today, as being the property that he would donate to the group so they can get the temple going. He also further agreed that at the end of the construction, for however long we took to build the temple, he will build the car park and he will get it going for us. So, in terms of the contribution of Mr. Motilal Moonan and his family, we here in Mayaro will be forever grateful for his vision, his donation, his love for, because he's a Rio Claro boy. For most of you, the Moonans are an intrinsic family here in the Mayaro community, Rio Claro. And in his mind and in his heart, it was one way how he could have given back something to a community that he would have grown up in and a community that he loves. When Mr. Moonan came that day, he brought TV6 and he brought the Bomb newspaper, which is the article that we have there. And we got enough news coverage and so on. And after that, the full journey towards getting the temple going started. And it took many years. It took about 2 years to get everything together. To get the money, to get the help, to get the people. There were so many people involved. I remember sitting in the shop, and when the Halliburton truck parked up in front, fellas come to buy a beer, and mommy see 2 bags of cement on the back of the Halliburton truck. She said, what do you do with that cement? Drop it by the temple for me now. So, parts of this temple, I'm sure, belongs to Halliburton. You know? But it was an effort of love on behalf of everyone to get the temple going. And after many backwards and forwards, Satmaraj and Pandit Rambachan did play a very pivotal role in the design in terms of how you're going to lay it out, what you wanted here, what you wanted there. And at some point in time, and I can't remember the date because I realized the printer didn't print the last 7 pages, so I'm trying to figure it out as I go along. But I recall that a couple months later, the name of the temple came into existence. And that would have been on January 27th, 1998. And that is where they advised that this temple should be a Devi temple. And we ended up as the Sumatie Sabha Devi Mandir, branch number 274, attached to the Mahasabha. And that is the day that the entity came into existence. And that is a very important day for all of us. And this is why on the 27th, that is our 25th anniversary of the entity that came to life. Work went on, and somewhere at the end of 2000 into 2001, the temple was about 75% completed when the first puja was done in the temple. And as time go on, you know, like in most organizations, you have a growth, you have a shrinkage, you have a growth, you have a shrinkage. And we have been able to keep the temple going. Auntie Bam, my mom, there are about 10 ladies, all whom the names that I can't remember, These are all stalwarts. Romel's mom. These are the ladies that are here oftentimes getting the work done. On Sundays, it was so important that we continue with the tradition, although nationally and more so in Mayaro, we had a movement away by several of our young East Indian population that would have gone across to the churches, the Pentecostal churches and so on. And that is something I believe that we must address going forward. And as we celebrate, as I close, as we celebrate, what I refer to as our Founders Day on the 27th, on our 25th anniversary, the work that started with the idea of Mommy and Auntie Bam, and it would have been propelled by all the names of the people that I just mentioned, the Harry Kisuns, the Harry Lals, the Munans, all the other prominent families in Mayaro, the East Indian families who came together. We are at a stage now where we must plan for the next 25 years. How do we get back our young people interested in our culture, in utilizing, as many of you would see today, we have a beautiful temple. I invite you to take a walk to the back of the temple. At the end of the day, it's designed very, very nicely. We can do lots of prayers and so on at the back. There are fruit trees. It's a place that you can come and meditate and so on. How do we get them back? How do we create succession when Ma Paray and Auntie Bam and a lot of our elders who are the stalwarts in the temple here, when they are no longer here, how do we move forward? And succession planning is a problem in this country. Right? Even in businesses and families, we are doing a bad job at it. And it's something that we must address going forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again, all our family, all our friends, our relatives who have come from so far. Those of you who have accepted overnight invitations to get here. On behalf of Daddy, myself, Nell, Mommy, my sisters, my in-laws, my Sarubai, and all the other persons who are in our orbit, I want to thank you again for coming today to make today a very special day for Mommy, and a special day that we celebrate while they are all alive and they can appreciate what that we acknowledge in the great work that they've done. And I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for coming and spending this special day with all of us. So I hope this little journey for the last 25 years of how we got here and how the idea came about and the struggle to get it, and nothing in life comes easy. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I will pass back on to Neil, who loves me very much.
Let's give the very distinguished Member of Parliament a hearty round of applause.